Susannah Faithfull suffered years of sexual abuse by the woman she should have trusted the most, her mother. And Susannah joins us now, along with agony aunt Denise Robertson.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for coming this morning.
This is such a terrible story, but as we are going to discuss, this is by no means a unique story. So you're 4 months old. Your mother had taken an unsuccessful overdose, hadn't she?
Yes, she had.
And your parents had split up. You'd spent time in a state-run nursery, and then your mother won you back, and you ended up with your mum, your maternal grandmother and grandfather, and your mother's sister, and your 8-year-old cousin, all in one house, which you describe as being a very noisy household. In what way?
Very noisy, very loud. TV was on a lot. A lot of people shouting. My grandfather had alcohol problems.
Yeah. So this was this was shouting and noisy in an aggressive fashion.
Yeah, sometimes, yes.
Yes. And so the one person that you would want to be able to go to in those circumstances, you know, if you have other members of the household who have problems, you know, is going to be the comfort of your mother.
Absolutely. Yes.
So when was the first time that you remember the abuse starting?
I must have been about 3 or 4 years old, and I remember certain aspects. Obviously, I won't go into detail here because of the nature of the programme.
Yeah.
But it was very frightening. I didn't have a choice. I was much smaller, and I learned very quickly that the more that I cried, the worse it would be.
And you kind of had two sort of personas, really. You'd be at school and you'd be very different, and then you'd come home and you'd be very kind of sort of insular inside yourself and very quiet, and you were sort of leading this double life.
Yes, like a day child that went to school, did all the things that kids do, and the night child that would be dealing with the abuse.
And you say that, I mean, you paint such an awful picture of you remembering the roses on the wallpaper.
Yes,
because it was the one thing that you would look at whilst this was happening to you.
Yeah, focus. Yeah, focus. Try not to feel, try not to be there, try to, I mean, wish that you were dead, really. I wish that I was dead.
And there was no one you could tell, no one you could talk to?
I tried to tell my aunt, my mother's older sister. I was about 3 or 4, saying something like, my mum's hurting me. But she just said I was telling stories, that wasn't happening. And later on I tried to tell my dad, who was a really absent father, when I was about 7 or 8.
And you thought this was normal? This is something that kids just have to put up with?
Absolutely, yeah. I thought that I was the only one that wasn't dealing with it, and just assumed that everybody else was having the same circumstances, and so that I just thought that I wasn't the one that was being able to deal with it.
Yeah.
I guess.
And it was when you were 9, your mother had a breakdown and she was sectioned.
Yeah.
So at this point, did you kind of feel a sense of relief slightly that she'd been taken away?
It's difficult because she was also, although we lived in it was an extended family, she was my main carer. I mean, she made sure of that, and in the way that she was. So I also, there was a lot of relief, yes, but she would come back for weekends.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because it's kind of, you've got the physical abuse, but as well as that, you've kind of got this whole other emotional abuse, really, where she's still your mother and you need her.
Absolutely.
As a child.
Absolutely, yes. I think also the loyalty. I think one of the things that has been so difficult in my therapy has been really acknowledging to myself on a deep level that it was my mother that did these things. I think that as a child I split off, I tried to focus on something else and felt if I'd have been a better daughter, or if I'd have been more well-behaved, all these things, that it wouldn't have happened. But of course I know now that's not the case.
No.
Yeah.
She was eventually fully hospitalised.
Yes, she was.
And then you left home at 16. I think for a while you lived with your father, trained to be a nurse, but had these terrible flashbacks and even attempted suicide yourself.
Yes,
when
yes, I
someone
did.
praised you.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, I find that hard. Even today, I find that hard.
Would you rather not talk about that?
No. If it's helpful, you know, that's why I've agreed to come on.
So what sort of, how often would the flashbacks happen? Would there be certain circumstances? Would it be all the time, just when you close your eyes before you go to sleep?
Particularly at night, I would say. If I could keep myself occupied during the day, then it would be a lot easier. But I think at night, that's when it was worse, because of course that's when the abuse happened. A lot of the time I would have the light on because I couldn't sleep in the darkness.
There was one moment, and you didn't see your mother very often, and she eventually died in her 70s.
Yeah.
And your father emigrated to Australia and,
Yes, yes.
and died there. But you went back on one of the couple of occasions that you visited your mum, and it was almost like sort of pricking the balloon, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it was.
When you back, she didn't know who you were.
No, she's never acknowledged. She never acknowledged.
But what did you say to her?
I leaned over her, not too near because I didn't want her to touch me or come near to me. And I looked into her eyes and towered over her like she did me for all those years. And I told her that I remembered what she did to me and that I hope that she burned in hell.
And did that help? I mean, for you, sort of.
When you walked out, how did you
I felt really. I was walking on air. I said it quite quietly, not with as much vehemence perhaps as I just said it. But I kind of, it was like I walked away. When all those years I couldn't walk away, you know.
And you went on to become a mother yourself. You had two sons.
Yes, I do. Yes.
So, becoming a mother, did that kind of make you think back and kind of question all those things because you had your own feelings towards your children, that closeness and that bond, and kind of really evaluate the whole thing again?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I think for me, it made me more of a protective mum and to be really aware of the dangers, I guess. I mean, not, you know, obviously not to make it a witch hunt, but I think because of my own experiences, I was very protective of them. But at the same time, it would bring up things for me and how to kind of be a mum without all that kind of in your head.
This isn't something, Denise, that surprises you.
No. I've known that it was happening for a very long time. I remember a man who cried on a phone-in to this programme because he had been abused by his mother. And I have for a very long time known from the content of letters and from people I've talked to that women are really very little different to men. Centuries of conditioning have made us behave in a different way, but underneath we are no different. We are no better and we are no worse. And the one thing, I think we have to talk about this, and that's why it's so brave of Susannah to talk about it, because it is happening, and as long as it remains the unmentionable, it will go on happening. But I don't want the mums who are taking their children to nursery now to think that all women are abusers. They are not. Thank God it is rare, as abuse of men are rare. All men are not predators. There's one thing, listening to what Susannah was saying, I thought this is exactly the testimony of someone who was abused by a father. But there's one tiny difference. If you watch a toddler before it knows anything about life or who's who or what's what, if danger threatens, there's a sudden noise, it will shrink into its mother. That is what we are programmed to do. Mum is there. If your mother is the danger, where do you run? You're in the middle of a prairie and there is nothing
Sort of a
anywhere.
double abuse.
It's a double abuse. And thank heaven it is rare, but as long as we pretend it never happens, it will go on.
What are your thoughts of the story that we've all been reading in the newspapers and what's been going on in that nursery?
Oh, I think it's appalling. I think it's devastating. It must be so difficult for those parents and those children.
And also for the parents not to know.
Yes, absolutely.
The parents not to know, and I cannot for the life of me work out why she is not telling. Don't tell me she doesn't remember. And I think she may be keeping it back as some kind of bargaining card. I can't believe that in law there isn't some way of punishing her more if she doesn't tell.
Well,
I hope she will.
Devon and Cornwall Police have confirmed that they should know by the end of this week whether Vanessa George will name her victims. So maybe we might find out something this
The
week.
one thing that does worry me is that I think we have got into a very cosy situation of saying, oh, someone's CRB checked. We don't need, they're safe, they're absolutely safe. The only protection a child has anywhere is vigilance. And she must have been able to be alone with those children for quite protracted lengths of time, because quite apart from what she did, she had to pacify the child before she brought it back into the rest of the nursery. So please, a CRB check only says you haven't offended yet. We need always to be vigilant.
We don't, of course, at the moment know precisely what went on in there, and there are no sort of clear details of how long that she may have had with the children and how quick she was, perhaps. Details as yet that we don't know. What we do know, as far as you're concerned, is that you've gone through a great deal of therapy, a great deal of personal hard work to get through this,
Yes,
and you also have your own foundation, which you're helping
Aurora
others
Health, yeah.
who are going through this. So what we'll do, I wanted to mention that because we'll put the link to your website on our website, so that if there is anyone who's been affected by this, can
Yes.
go onto our website and get a
Absolutely.
direct link to you and to your
Yes.
help, and others like you who do that. And thank you for talking about
Thank
it
you
You're
very
so welcome.
today.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Denise.